This episode is sponsored by Foreman School in Litchfield, Connecticut, a coeducational college preparatory school that empowers bright students who learn differently. To learn more about the nation's first and best co-ed school for high school and postgraduate students with learning differences, go to formanschool.org/about/distraction. Hello and welcome to Distraction. I'm your host, Dr. Ned Hallowell. Thank you so much for joining me for today's listener Q&A podcast. Today's question comes from Cynthia, who writes, "Hi Ned." In case you don't know it, that's my first name. "Hi Ned. If we knew what to look for, could children with the inattentive presentation of ADHD be diagnosed as children? I often read that girls who more commonly have the inattentive type don't get diagnosed because they aren't disruptive but dreamy. It concerns me to read that the boys are diagnosed 2 to 3 times more often than the girls. If we knew to look for the dreamy, flaky children, would we find those with inattentive ADHD and get them help, or is it still too difficult to tell?" Signed, Cynthia. Cynthia, yes, indeed, we can diagnose them. We can diagnose them at age 5. All we have to do is talk to them, as opposed to waiting for the boys to be in our face and being disruptive. The daydreamy kind of ADHD, what I call the Emily Dickinson kind of ADHD, which, by the way, can occur in boys, you find by talking to the girls, saying, "What is it like to be in the classroom?" And she'll say, "Oh, it's fine. I'm almost never there." You know, she's sitting there staring out the window, lost in her thoughts, wrapping her hair around her finger, counting the specks of dust in the shaft of light coming in, quite oblivious to what's going on around her. And so it may manifest as her underachieving or not participating very much in class. You may mistake her for being not very interested or not very interesting, or not terribly motivated, or not terribly bright, all of which is wrong. If you just sit down and talk to her and say, "Tell me about yourself, and why don't you speak up more often?" And she'll tell you, "Well, I love school, I love books, I love the other kids. I just love to daydream as well." And there's your diagnosis. You know, it is true. The reason girls get missed, and for that matter women, is because they tend not to be disruptive. And the boys who tend to be disruptive get diagnosed and get the help. But there's no reason under the sun that you can't get this diagnosis in grade school. My daughter, when she was in 3rd grade, we went for a parent-teacher conference, and the teacher said, "I'll ask Lucy a question and she'll just stare back at me and smile." And the teacher said, "I wonder if she's really processed the question." And then the teacher said, "Do you think she might have ADHD?" And I said, "Oh my gosh." And my wife said, "Well, let's go get a good diagnosis." Not trusting me, but there I'd missed it in my own daughter all those years. And it's because, you tend not to look at your children with the same sort of eye that you look at the students in the classroom. Short answer to your question, yes, absolutely, but you have to go looking for it to make the diagnosis in a child who has the inattentive type. Just as important to make the diagnosis, though, because the interventions can make a huge, huge difference. My daughter is now senior executive producer for not executive, I don't know what her title is, but she has a big job at the National Football League, and she's in charge of running all kinds of things. And she's doing great, and she loves the job, and they love her, and I think a lot of the folks who work at the NFL have this particular quality, so misleadingly called ADHD. All right, well, that's going to do it for today, and thank you, Cynthia, for sending in today's question. Please, please, please send in your questions. We thrive on them. We live off of them. We need them. If you have a question you'd like me to answer in an episode just like this, send it to connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. And my thanks to the Foreman School in Litchfield, Connecticut for sponsoring this episode. I love the Foreman School. It's really the leading secondary school for kids who learn differently. They really know what they're doing. They really embrace a strength-based model. They know these are the gifted kids, the creative kids, the imaginative kids, and they treat them as such rather than as disabled or disordered. It's where you'd want your child to go if he or she had dyslexia, ADHD, or any other difference. Great school. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. This podcast was recorded and produced by the wonderful Sarah Guertin. I'm Dr. Ned Hallowell, and thank you so much for listening. The episode you just heard was sponsored by the Foreman School in Litchfield, Connecticut. Foreman gives students who learn differently the resources to discover what they care about, to find success in a huge range of fields, and to just be themselves beyond their diagnoses. Learn more about the nation's first and best co-ed school for high school and postgraduate students with learning differences at formanschool.org/about/distraction.